right, so now we're going to talk about the benefits of participating or learning about research studies. We need to avail ourselves of all that science has to offer. Can I get an amen on that?
Amen.
And the best way to do that is to keep our minds open and be as informed as possible. So now I'm going to introduce to you Hope Vetraselli from CISCRP, who is one of our partners for today, and she will introduce our panelists.
Good morning, everybody. How are we today? All right, welcome to the Black Health Matters Winter Summit and to our conversation, taking control of our health, empowering our communities through advancements in science. So as mentioned, my name is Hope Vetraselli, and I'm the Senior Manager of Events with CISCRP. And our goal is really to help leave you informed and empowered about how to be an advocate for your health and all the different opportunities there are for you with clinical research, research studies, and to make yourself more informed. Before I turn it over to Dr. Thompson to introduce our panelists, we have a quick video we wanted to share called MT Pharmacy, and it really is a beautiful way to start the conversation about what pharmacies might look like without clinical studies. There we go.
Are you open?
Yes, we are. Welcome to the MT Pharmacy. There's nothing on the shelves because we wanted to show what modern medicine would be like without clinical trials. Clinical trials are medical research studies involving patients. They can help discover new medicines or get improved versions of existing medicines. They help us find out if a treatment can work in patients. We'd like to fill these shelves a bit like how clinical trials fill the shelves in a regular pharmacy.
I picked cancer for my box because my mother was a victim of cancer. She died in the year 2008. I was the age of 9 years old.
I've actually never thought about the fact that without clinical trials, we wouldn't have any of the medicines that we take every single day.
All right, thank you very much. Now I'm going to introduce Dr. Thompson to introduce our panelists. Round of applause for Dr. Thompson, please.
Good morning. Thank you so much for allowing me to introduce myself and the all of us medical research that I am participating in, and I'll do just a little bit of that before I introduce our panel. I'm Dr. Tina Ann Thompson. I'm a family physician at Emory Healthcare, and nice to meet you. And I'm the program lead for primary care, and I'm one of the co-principal investigators in the All of Us medical research. And so what we do at All of Us is we try to take the DNA, so the genetic makeup of the human, and then link that to whether or not the social determinants of health affect outcomes. That's what we're doing. So it is likely that we will not necessarily provide significant changes in our generation, but we are committed to making a difference in the future generation. So we thank you for allowing us to present. We have a table at the back, and our tagline, I'm just gonna say it, is medical research hasn't always seen us. They say them, but us. And we're changing that. We need to be represented, folks. It is vitally important for my children and grandchildren to have. So clinical trials look at new ways to prevent, detect, and treat disease. Treatments might include new drugs or new combinations of drugs, new surgical procedures, and new ways to use old drugs. So please help me welcome the members of this panel. Our moderator is Mel Hardman at the end. Mel is a certified clinical research professional. She has over 15 years of progressive healthcare leadership and clinical research experience, who has found her niche in site and investigator engagement. clinical trial patient recruitment and retention, we need her at all of us, and protocol evaluation activities. She is dedicated to increasing awareness and visibility of clinical trials in communities of color. That's us. Another hand for Mel for us. Next to Mel is Kalia Johnson, Dr. Kalia Johnson, who serves as Division Chief of Pediatric Palliative Care at Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and Emory's Department of Pediatrics. Let's welcome Kalia. So someone said this morning, oh, this is Kalia, and I said, you know, how come you know each other? I was like, because there's this many Black women physicians, and yes, we know each other, and it's important that we recruit the next generation to do this with us. That's just a plug for all my pre-meds out there. Next to Kalia is Mapiller Don. Mapiller is the founder of the MTS Sickle Cell Foundation Incorporated, and she has served as a board member of the American Red Cross Minority Recruitment Advisory Board. A hand for Mapiller. And Dr. Melvin Mann is a 28-year survivor of terminal leukemia. And the reason I was giving him the doctor title is because his baby is a doctor and she's a psychiatrist, y'all, and I was too excited to hear about that. A hand for Patrice. And in 1998, Mel entered a phase 1 clinical trial for the drug Gleevec and is the world's longest living Gleevec survivor. So he is the perfect advocate for clinical trials, health equity, and bone marrow cell donors. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mel to moderate our panel. Thank you, Mel.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Can you guys hear me? Hi, I'm so excited to see this many people of color in one room talking about clinical trials and health equity. Oh my gosh. Let me just say, so we have dynamic panelists up here. We'll get into a deep conversation about health inequities, clinical trials, why it's important, and why you're here. Obviously, you want to know more, so that's a plus already. As my shirt says, inclusivity is an action word. So I know you guys have heard about diversity and it's trending everywhere. Oh, we need minorities. Oh, we need to up the numbers. The issue with that is, how do we up the numbers? We don't up the numbers by just upping the numbers. We actually have to include ourselves in clinical trials in order for the numbers to up. So we'll have an open discussion about, you know, how do we do that? What does that look like? And coming off of COVID, and these vaccines that have been produced, I know there's been a lot of skepticism, a lot of people going to Google, trying to figure out, where did this drug come from? Should I do that? Should I get the drug? How do you guys feel? And Dr. Johnson, for you and being a doctor in the industry, how do you feel about vaccines and people of color and the development? Can you kind of talk to that?
Sure. Is the mic on? Can y'all hear me?
You got to speak up, girl.
Okay. Maybe I'll
You want to switch?
Yeah. Okay, how about this? Great. It's so awesome to see everyone this morning. It's so many people who sacrificed their Saturday to talk about health and healthcare. So I applaud you all as well for being here. It's a great question. I think as a pediatrician, a child health advocate, I absolutely believe in vaccines. I think vaccines have brought us a long way as a society in staying healthy. But for us as Black people, we can't ignore the history of what has happened to us in this country. I was fortunate enough to take part of a learning opportunity yesterday, a course that was on racism in American society and healthcare. And I would recommend a book by the name of a gentleman named Dante King. He ran the course. His book is called 400 Years of Holocaust. And it essentially walks through the history of our country and the reality that laws, the infrastructure for our society were based on racist principles. And that in turn impacts medicine and healthcare. We all have heard of the Tuskegee experiments, very important, impactful, painful things that happened in our history as Black people that cause us to mistrust health and healthcare. But we are in a time and a generation where we have to start breaking that legacy. And I think modern medicine is in a place of awareness now that they've never been in, where they are saying these past atrocities are wrong and we want to work with communities of color to correct those atrocities. So within that, as we have seen these vaccines roll out, I think institutions, organizations, healthcare entities have wanted to be really attentive to our voices and making sure clinicians of color, researchers of color are at the front line saying, we're here, we want to support, we want to protect and make sure our people and everyone is getting the access to the best opportunities possible for health and wellness. So with that, I will say at Emory, we participated in a number of the trials for the COVID vaccine. So I knew the pediatricians, they were my colleagues, the people who were working in the labs sometime around the clock to get the vaccine out. I could look out of my office and see where that was happening and know these are people, my colleagues who are working just as hard as me and want to hear the perspective of people of color and have patients of color on the trials. As a mom, I decided to enroll my little boy, who at the time was just at 5, in the trial when they were starting to test the vaccine in children. Because I, as a physician, could research, I worked with the people making the vaccine, I could have the trust and confidence this is a good thing and it's being scientifically rigorously studied. And we need little Black boys and little Black girls in the trial to make sure it's safe for us. And my boy did wonderfully. And we tell him, Aubrey, you're a superhero. Because if he had not been in that trial, all kids in the United States wouldn't have had access to the vaccine in the time that they did. So that's what I'll share.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson. Is this working? Sorry, I guess we're going to play Pass the Mic. And I wanted to add to that, if you think about things that you take every day, aspirin, some of you use defibrillators and pacemakers. We often think about clinical trials like over our heads, like medicines that are far removed from us. But if you think about it, when you get a headache, you take a Tylenol. It didn't just appear out of anywhere. It came from clinical research. So if you did not have clinical research, you would still have a headache. Right? So that's how important clinical trials are. And as Dr. Johnson was saying, there are people like us who are in the labs. There are people like us, such as myself, who's developing protocols for people that look like us. Because there can be millions of people in trials, hundreds of thousands of people, but if they don't look like every ethnicity that is going to consume the drug, it's only going to work for the people that were in the study. So we wonder why our grandparents are passing away from cancer, why our aunts are getting diabetes and they're not living past 70, but someone who has a different color skin is 90 years old and they're out there jogging down the street. That's because the medicine worked for them. Right? We weren't in the trial, so it doesn't work for us. The medicine doesn't know what to do with our biomarker. So we need you to participate in that. And take, for instance, Mapiller, who is a wonderful advocate for sickle cell. She can talk to you more about why it's important to participate and how advances have helped her and her children with the illness. Mapiller?
Testing. Okay. Absolutely. I think you set that up so perfectly because, you know, we're talking about the importance of clinical trial and diversifying clinical trial. But what do you say about a patient community where, you know, clinical trials are hard to come by? So that's what it was like for sickle cell, because up until maybe 5-6 years ago, we had just one drug on the market for sickle cell. And that was actually a cancer drug. that was repurposed for sickle cell. So you have a condition that impacts about 100,000 Americans, predominantly people of African descent, and that is very marginalized. We don't get a lot of funding for research, to treat sickle cell patients. And so for us, we're just grateful that anyone is looking into doing some kind of clinical research or some kind of going into looking into some therapies for sickle cell patients. We now have, because of clinical research, because of funding, within the last 3 years or so, we have about 3 new drugs on the market that have been approved for sickle cell. And that would not, thank you. And that would not be possible if we were not making ourselves available to try these drugs. And also the fact that for now, I think, which may be unique to sickle cell, when we talk about diversity and inclusion, it's not necessarily not having people to try the drugs, but making sure that everyone that have sickle cell disease have access to these therapies and treatments.
That's right. Amen. Absolutely. And working in the clinical trial industry, being on the sponsor side, sponsor meaning I actually help develop the drugs. And so we're sitting in a boardroom trying to determine how do we get out to the population. And I'm standing there thinking, you're trying to have a clinical trial that requires someone to come into an office. Sometimes a screening visit can take 6 to 8 hours. Imagine being a single Black mother with sickle cell, needing to go in for 6 to 8 hours. What do you do with your children? What do you do if you're not on a bus line? Yeah. What do you do? Right. So we need to include all of us there. And we have made a lot of advancements. Here's Mr. Mel Mann, who can talk to what has happened to him and why clinical trials have been such a success in his life, actually a story of triumph. If you can speak to that for a second.
Well, thank you very much. In 1995, I was diagnosed with terminal leukemia. I was a major in the Army stationed in Michigan with my wife and my 5-year-old daughter. And I was given 3 years to live. And the doctor told me that the only cure was a bone marrow transplant. And being a Black person, my chances were pretty slim because the previous year, only 20 out of 2,000 Blacks were able to find a life-saving donor. So I did a bunch of bone marrow drives all over the country, the military churches, malls, colleges, just, my friends did them over in Germany, Hawaii, and we did one at the Pentagon, but we could not find a match. So I was at one drive in Columbus, Georgia. My wife's aunt put that drive on, and this gentleman came to the drive who did not look like me, and he had a different type of leukemia, and he said he had been out to MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, and he had tried a clinical trial, and it worked for him. And no one had told me about clinical trials. I was 18 months into my 3-year diagnosis, so that's why it's important to know about it at the beginning. So I had 18 months left to see if I could find a new drug. So I started going out to MD Anderson, and I did that every 3 months, and then I was trying different drugs. But by the 3-year mark, there was still no drug that worked for me. And I would go to sleep, wake up after 8 hours and feel like I never went to sleep. And I asked the doctor, are there any more drugs? He said, we got this one drug, it's close, it's in the lab, but we're having problems with animals. So I went back home. He called me 8 months later, and I flew back out to MD Anderson, took the drug, which was Gleevec, and it worked. It didn't work for the first guy, but it worked for me. Yeah. But it was another 3 years before the drug was released to the public. So if I would have had to wait 3 more years, if I had not known about that drug in the clinical trial, I would not be here. And there was only so many people that were allowed on that trial. Phase 1 was only 20 people when I started. Actually 20 at 3 different sites. And the total was just over 1,000 people. So of the 30,000 people who are diagnosed with CML each year, a lot of those folks did not get the drug in time. So that's why it's important to know about clinical trials and to know about all your options.
Thank you. Very good. Before we move into question and answer, I wanted to sort of round this out with, if you don't take anything else from this session, take away that clinical trials is not just a trial. It is moving into a healthcare option. It is our right to receive care outside of normal care. So when you go into your doctor's office and they're saying, well, there's nothing left for us to do. They're quick to say that, right? There's nothing left. You need to ask, empower yourself to say, are there any trials in the industry? Or is there anything being developed? Is there something that I can try? So then they can ask you. I've talked very candidly to a lot of doctors and they will say, we're kind of afraid to approach Black people about trials because we think they're going to say no. Absolutely not. You don't get to do that. So you take ownership of your own health and you ask them, is there something that you have that can help me?
Can I piggyback off of what you're saying? Because that's so powerful. A few months back, my daughter, I have 3 daughters with sickle cell, and my oldest was having a pain crisis. So we were at CHOA, admitted, and it was during a time where she was having crises back and forth, and she's in college, first semester. And so I actually went to clinicaltrial.gov.
Absolutely.
And searched to see if there were any gene therapy options in the Atlanta area. It didn't work out for us. But every single person can go to clinicaltrial.gov and search for whatever is going on in your life, trying to see if there are any trials available. And you can reach out. You can email the site coordinators and ask if they're enrolling. Actually, the website will say if they're enrolling for the trials. So I want to encourage everyone because there is hope out there. And sometimes it's just a click away.
Very good. Thank you for adding that. Clinicaltrials.gov. So we're going to give you guys an opportunity to ask any questions to the panelists that you have. So if you do, just raise your hand and will somebody run to them with a microphone? Hope will come to you with a microphone if you're not loud enough. Oh, she has a microphone for you. There's a gentleman right here at the front. Right here, Hope.
Good morning.
Hi.
The question that I have is, how do you find out how many
At the bottom?
At the bottom.
There you go.
Yeah.
Testing. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The question that I have is, how do you find out how many African Americans are in a trial or have successfully completed a trial? Where can you find that data?
Thank you for your question. That's a really good question. So statistics normally are not dropped from a trial until it reaches a certain phase. Now, when you go into a study, you can ask that question. You can say, you know, what minority population is your target? What are you targeting? How many successful? There's demographics to the study. It just sometimes is not released until after the study, you know, the drug makes it to a particular stage. It takes a very long time and a lot of money for a drug to be developed, if you can imagine. So a lot of that is kind of hush hush until it gets to a certain stage. But when you're going to clinicaltrials.gov, it'll give you kind of step by step what they're looking for, sort of what is the inclusion, what do you kind of need to be in order to get into the study, and then do some research, you know, kind of back search on what the drug is. You can do that at clinicaltrials.gov.
And there's only 5% of African Americans that participate in clinical trials, which does not match up with the overall population. When I went out to MD Anderson, I was one of the few Blacks out there getting that state-of-the-art treatment.
Yeah, as of right now, we're at about 7 to 9% overall African American population that's participating, and of course, we're way more than that nationwide.
Yeah, we have one comment over here, and then we're going to take some questions on the other side as well.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Everything that you said really resonated with me. My name is Danielle Mitchell. I'm the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research.
Hey, girl.
So I just wanted to say that, you know, we are here. There's 10,000 plus members in Black Women in Clinical Research that want to make sure that when you participate in these clinical trials, that you have someone that looks like you. And so a lot of times these companies are here and they're trying to get you to participate in the clinical trials, but there's no one, you're looking at them like, okay, you don't know my struggle, you don't know my challenges. And so we are here. I've created an organization so that you can see people that look like you. So I want to encourage my members to be more involved in the clinical trial process. And like you guys said, when I told my family that I was involved in clinical research, they said, what about Henrietta Lacks? What about the Tuskegee syphilis study? So know that there are people, especially Black women, Black men, and minorities that are conducting clinical trials.
Thank you, Danielle.
All right. I see we have a lot of hands up, which I love to see. I'm going to try to get to as many as possible. We only have time for a couple more questions, but we do have a booth at the back of the room that you can come find us afterwards to make some more questions. And I see a young lady who's been waiting to ask a question here.
Thank you. Can you speak to how the clinical trial, the pharmaceutical companies are being creative with people who have transportation and child care challenges?
Yep, that's a great question. And actually, that's a lot of what I do. So once a protocol is written, meaning you have all of the processes and steps to how we're going to go about recruiting for a study, there's a lot of money that goes into determining how we reach the community. So for instance, if it was a sickle cell trial or a lupus trial, then we know based on behind the doors and who's developing this, do we need transportation in this area? We also have what we call a feasibility stage, where we determine where are the sites, does it make the most sense, and based on where they are, what are the needs for that population? So that's how we determine, and that is why we need people of color in the industry, not just patients, but we need doctors and coordinators and people who are developing these organizations so that when we're sitting in these boardrooms creating these protocols and processes, I can raise my hand and say, oh, you're going to get a site in Decatur? You might want to have a transportation service, so that they know that, because they're sitting in a boardroom and they don't look like us, and they don't know that. They don't know that people of color live in Decatur, Georgia, and they need transportation. So we're trying to work. It's taking a while, but we're getting there. But we do take time to kind of research the area and determine what's the best needs in that area for patients who may potentially be in studies.
And one more thing, they're moving towards decentralized clinical trials, where I had to go out to MD Anderson. So what they're trying to do is bring the trial to the patient. You know, even if they have to come to the patient's home, that's the way the future is going to be. Just bring it to the patient.
And I think we need to ask for that more.
Yeah.
Because if we're not asking and requesting and saying, oh, is there a decentralization option for this trial? We all know COVID has made it where I think everyone understands that that's possible.
Yeah.
But if we as a community are not asking, they are more likely to go back to how things used to be.
That's true.
All right, we have time for just one more question. But again, please do come check out our booth to speak with our speakers and ask some more questions.
Do they have any clinical trials on type 2 diabetes? Is it just your diet, whatever? Because we have type 2 diabetes running rapid in our race.
And there are type 2 diabetes clinical trials too. Yes, if you go to clinicaltrials.gov.
Will it cure?
Will it what?
Will it cure that?
Now again, we're talking about trials. It's research, so we don't know necessarily what it's going to do. What we propose that it's going to do is take care of you, you know, give you longevity, give you a better life. But we cannot even use the word cure because we don't know. But what we do know is people are living based on clinical trials. He's been here for a very long time. And that's what we want to continue to do.
And I think it's also important to understand that a lot has been done to protect the rights of, you know, people who are in clinical trials. Given the historical context of everything that has happened to us, so much is being done to make sure that we're included. And so we have to empower ourselves now to ensure that we're asking the questions that are important to us. So if you have questions specific to whatever this trial is, make sure you voice it before you sign that consent that you want to be a part. But you have rights now. You have a lot of rights.
And as far as the cure, it's you're comparing one thing against the other. And the trial drug has shown some response in preclinical studies. So they're trying it in humans, just like when Daniel tried it in the Bible with a different diet. You're comparing two things against the other and see if the other one's going to work. And one thing I want to say is that you can come off the trial at any time that you want to. You don't have to stay on the trial.
You do not.
So that's a concern of a lot of people. And for oncology trials, you would be getting the same, at least the standard drug, the standard treatment. You would not be getting something that's going to make you worse.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mann. Oh my gosh, we are out of time. We are out of time. I appreciate all of your questions. Thank you to the panelists, Dr. Johnson, Mapiller, Mr. Melvin Mann. Thank you, CISCRP, BHM. There is a booth in the back, a CISCRP booth. So if you want to go visit that booth and ask any more questions, also, I can give out a card. If there's anything that you want to ask me, please feel free to email me. I respond. I really do, because I'm very passionate about this. And I appreciate you all. Please give my panelists a hand.
Thanks so much again for joining us.